Redevelopment Commission meeting of March 20th, 2023. Happy spring. The sun is nice, the temperature is not so nice. But at any rate, also for anyone that's staying for the Advisory Plan Commission meeting, that meeting is over at City Services this evening, starts at 7 o'clock. They have a workshop going on. Okay, John, declaration of quorum. Please take the roll.
Mike Steele. Linda Noss.
Here.
Bob Beaudry.
Here.
Doug Holtz.
Here.
Jill Doyle.
Here.
Joe Plankus.
Here, we have a quorum. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of our commission meeting from January 17, 2023. Are there any questions or comments, modifications to the minutes for that meeting? Okay, hearing none, I'm open for a motion for approval of the minutes for the January 17th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second Linda Nass.
Okay, motion by Jill Doyle, second by Linda Nass to approve the minutes. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John, take the roll, please.
Doug Holtz.
Aye.
Jill Doyle.
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye.
Linda Noss.
Aye.
Bob Beaudry.
Aye.
Okay, next item on the agenda is claims docket for 320. We are receiving, from this point forward, as I understand it from Jeremy, we're receiving the format that is used also for the city council. So you will see a cover page on it, and then you will see the detail behind that for the items that are up for approval. I noticed in today's, and I didn't print it out, John, but I noticed you have the detail from the invoices for Crone and the others, so I did not bring those copies with me. But do we have any questions or comments on the items on the docket?
I just wanted to know, on the first copy, the cover sheet had a total of 0, and Kim did send us an updated copy this afternoon, but didn't reattach the detail. So I just wanted to make sure those numbers she had on the cover sheet match the detail. A total amount of $665,290.50, and then the payables of $10,295.
Okay,
Is that?
good correction, yeah.
Yeah, is that correct, John, those numbers? Or as far as you know?
Yep,
I
that's the
haven't
corrected
had-
copy.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've not chatted.
Yeah, that's a copy from Deborah. Okay, if there are no questions, I'm open for.
No, I have a question in that I believe, aren't we being asked to approve here, if I'm not mistaken, some legal fees on the Grand Park RFP? Because this was in a different format, I want to make sure that I'm reading it correctly. And in January at the meeting, it was said that we were going to get another contract for the Grand Park RFP fees for the legal with Taft. Have we gotten that and approved that? Can we approve anything without a contract?
Yes, you can approve these services and Cam can correct me. if I'm
Without a
wrong.
contract?
Yeah, as they were assigned. So we were asked to do that work, and it was billed accordingly. So without, the engagement with the not to exceed that you previously approved is separate. That not to exceed only applies for time apart from the Grand Park RFP. But it's my understanding that that time is incurred just to provide those services that have been requested, even outside of a specific engagement for that purpose. Yes, you could approve those.
And we do plan to bring forth an engagement letter specific to the Grand Park RFP, but I have not, if I've received it, I haven't reviewed it yet for presentation, so it'll be for you at the next meeting. And whatever expenses that are incurred before that will be included in that not to exceed.
Does that answer your question?
So we don't think that's the cart before the horse? Because it said in the minutes, Mr. Lawler stated that another contract would be presented in February, which we didn't meet. which is specific to the Grand Park RFP process, as these services are not covered by this letter that was presented in January. So you're saying we can go ahead and approve these for the Grand Park RFP without a contract?
I believe you can because they were incurred as requested. Time was incurred to perform those services, and they serve and benefit the allocation area. That's really the math that's required. So yes, I think legally you can. You can vote in accordance with your predilection there, but I don't think it would be illegal to approve those to be paid or improper to be paid out of the allocation area. They're benefited by the services.
And then, and then at the end of this agenda tonight, we're taking up there's a budget presentation for the 2023 TIF budget, and we haven't approved any legal fees yet for this year. So that's my next question. Since the budget we approved last year had no legal fees, so again, do we have the cart before the horse here in that we don't even have a legal budget yet, and we don't have a contract, but this is coming up first on the agenda? That's my question.
Yeah,
Second question.
I think the answer is similar. The budget, given that the RDC's TIF revenues are effectively dictated by statute, they are for specific purposes that are provided in statute, can be used to serve or benefit the purposes of the RDC toward the ends of its reason for existing, then yes, they can be paid. The budget serves more of a prioritization function. Here's what we prioritize in terms of how we will spend those revenues. But it is effectively pre-authorized by statute that you could use them for professional services that serve or benefit the area from which those revenues were derived. So yes, I think even if it happens to fall before the budget.
So I'll make 2 points here. The budget you approved in October did have legal fees for it. Specifically, it was allocated in the east side TIF area, $250,000.
Not on the budget we approved, that was printed out and we approved. There was no legal fees, zero.
Okay. Second one is, it is a professional service, just like O.W. Crone. We don't have a contract with O.W. Crone for the services that they provide, and it's never come into question before.
But it is gonna be on this updated budget we're gonna see later.
The legal fees? Yeah, that's the primary purpose of the
Okay.
updated budget.
All right. Just wanna make sure we all understand
I
what's
don't-
where.
So
Go ahead, Bob.
it just seems bad. I mean, we have no budget for the fees. We have, and actually, truth be told, as far as the RDC body, we don't even have an RFP approval for incurring the fees in the beginning. I don't even, I mean, that's where I'm a little bit lost. I'd at least like to be covered by some kind of agreement before I would vote yes. I mean, not that I think they didn't deserve to get paid, but
Let me ask you this, Cam. Could we modify the agenda and move the budget up to the top? Do that first? Is that even necessary?
That would be up to you all. You certainly can. That would be discussion for the commission to have about the order of the agenda. And you as the president, I think, can make changes there. It'd be good to talk about that and why.
Well, okay, let's do the budget item.
Fine if it
Right.
is a more logical order, then we can certainly reorder.
Well, Bob raises a point, and Linda, if it's just a matter of getting the budget approved, then we can move on. Then we need to do that to expedite the process here. So, John, if you would, why don't you cover budget? We'll move that up behind the meeting minutes.
John Rogers with the City of Westfield. You'll find attached the 2023 budget. There's a few, the main change between this budget and the budget we did in October is the fact that we outlined each of the legal fees in each of the, what we thought were the appropriate and most likely areas where those fees will be incurred. Are there any questions? I didn't receive any emails over the week, or from the time I released this, so
Well, the only other change is obviously the services number is changed as you've made different estimates here, John. We also have the council repayment, which came out of 4 different TIFs.
Yep,
So
thank
those
you.
really are the three
Thank you, yes.
changes in this budget versus 2022.
Yes.
Okay, questions on the budgets?
Yeah, I have a question on the page, which is the 316 Main Street TIF. A little further back there.
Okay.
Got it? Okay, the last line under expenses, it has an account number of 309 018 280 for council repayment, $1,050,000. That account is not under 316 Main TIF. Is that a typo? Or why is that?
That's
Why is it
that
not
is
under
that is a
309?
typo, and that was corrected, and I'm not sure, that was corrected. So it is a typo, yes.
Okay,
It's 316, 18, 280.
so you've somewhere corrected that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and then, all right, so then that makes all the numbers okay when you take that $1,050,000 and put it in the other account? You've corrected it and corrected those numbers also?
The typo is in 316. So that number is correct for
So
316.
it is supposed to be coming from
316.
316, not 309.
309, because 309 has its own number.
Okay, all right. So this should be corrected to 316. That's what I was looking for today. I couldn't
Okay,
find
yeah.
that. Okay, so that's why I'm asking. So it's corrected to that. And then, okay, so then I can change those totals later.
I could have changed this if you had let me know.
Well, I'm sorry, I was totally taken up today with something
Hey,
else.
John, this is Cindy.
Yeah,
John,
yeah.
this is Cindy Gottschard. And I believe that Marla sent that change out last week on those two
Yep.
account numbers.
And I changed
So-
it, so I'm not sure whether I just attached the wrong copy or, but
Okay.
I did make that change, Cindy.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right,
just
I'll
gonna,
make sure it's done.
yeah, because on the copy still attached, it hasn't been changed. So if you're aware of that and going to change that, I'll just make a note before my vote. Then my other question is on the 305, just wanted to ask this question, the 305 Grand Junction TIF where we have legal fees, $150,000, and a second line, which is the RFP legal fees, $100,000. Have we looked at that again, or do we think with the changes in the Grand Park RFP, it's still gonna be $100,000 this year? You know, now that we're not selling, we're gonna do something else, do we still see this as a valid number?
Yes, that's our best estimate of what the cost is.
It is still, okay, all right.
And I would
you.
only add, it's treated as a not to exceed, so it's not a flat fee. It's-
Right,
And,
but
and yes,
we're
it,
still within here with everything that's gone on. Okay.
correct. And,
All right.
and to the extent it's influenced by the direction that the review committee wants to take, and it's less, then it's less. You know, that's just the cap.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Any other questions for John? Okay, if not, I'm open for a motion for approval of our 2023 budget.
So moved. This is Doug Holtz.
Okay, I'll second that. Joe Plankus. Motion by Doug, second by Joe for approval of 2023 budget. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Take the roll, please, John.
Linda Noss,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, I hate to do this, but could we have Doug's vote again now that he's on video?
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
okay, Doug, don't get nervous.
heard you,
You're on the
but
big screen. You're on the big screen. All
Does he
right.
need to say as amended, or we're just understanding it has been?
As long as you're okay understanding that it has been, I.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Doug Holtz.
Aye.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Yep.
Okay, now we'll get back to claims. We have a budget established. Any other questions? That's fine, Bob. Any other questions on budget? Otherwise, I'm open for a motion for approval of the claims.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims for March 20, 2023.
I'll second that motion. Motion by Jill Doyle, second by Joe Plankus. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John, if you will.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Bob Bodray,
Aye.
Linda Noss.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, thank you. Next item is ratification of Grand Park user agreements. Mr. Trinian.
Good evening, Commission members. Matt Trini in Grand Park. Since our January meeting, we've gone 2 months of contract agreements, both February and March. Sent along those two separate folders of agreements. Didn't receive any questions of great significance, but happy to answer any questions that you guys may have at this point.
Any questions from any commission members regarding those 2 months of contract approvals? Okay, seeing none, let's do it in one motion. I move that we approve both the February and March Grand Park user agreements. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is that Doug? Oh, Bob, I'm sorry, Bob. Okay, second by Bob. John, take the roll, please. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Bob Bodray,
Aye.
Linda Noss,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Mr. Trinian again, Grand Park year-end presentation.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Again, Matt Trinian here, Grand Park.
I should
So
say
as we've
Matt Trinian and team.
Yes, absolutely. As we've done in the past, in our previous quarterly reports, I will give you guys an overall Grand Park review and then allow William Knox with Legacy Sports Group to give his update from Legacy standpoint, and then allow Blake Hibbler from Bullpen Tournaments to give his update. So this is 2-in-1 essentially, a fourth quarter review along with a year-end totality look at the campus. So when we look at the statistical data for 2022, you can see that pretty large numbers, right? But to put it in perspective, for 22 year to date, our 3.6 million visits, basically, we surpassed 2021's numbers by about 1 million visits to the campus. A lot of that was driven by some COVID fallout in 21, as we talked about last year about this time, but really strong rebound in 22, and that data shows that. So, and these numbers account for the bullpen numbers, and Blake will speak to his side specifically here in a bit, but these encapsulate the full campus. As we look at some of the financial data, some of these numbers are kind of shocking if you kind of take a look at some of the increases for Q4 and year-to-date in total for 22. But I want to keep in mind a few things. So from a revenue side, we'll start there first. You see some of the decreases from 21. While we didn't see as many visitors in 21, we were still full of a lot of events. But two specific cancellations that I want to call out, specifically in the fourth quarter, we had an event to the tune of about $70,000 that canceled a week before the event was set to start. And when I say $70,000, that was just the rental of the facility. So that doesn't take into account the hotels, the concessions, all the ancillary revenues that we would receive from hosting an event of that size. And then along with that, a few weeks later, we had roughly $13,000 of outdoor rental that was canceled in a poor weather weekend on the field sports side of the campus. And again, with that, you see no concessions or hotel revenue. So from a revenue standpoint, you're close to $90,000 worth of loss there. But overall, not too concerning given where we finished out the year. As we look at the expenses, these look staggering. As I review these and send these out, it's like, holy cow, that looks terrible. Few reasons behind this, and we'll get into that, but I made a conscious effort with our team to reinvest into the property in the latter months of last year. And I think as we talked about our budget for 23, there were a lot of questions around, hey, you have these big lines, and I remember, Linda, we talked about it, and you have these big lines, and why are we have these big lines? And so you saw that in action here. Just to run through some of the bigger numbers, we were fortunate to receive a grant from Hamilton County to allow us to purchase some additional flooring for the event center. So We purchased about another 10,000 square feet of flooring that allowed us to fully encapsulate the center field and extend into the hallway as well, so that you have a seamless hard surface from the hallway to the back of the event center there. So we see that as a huge benefit, and while that's a $130,000 expense, we have the $130,000 roughly from Hamilton County in a grant. So we're fortunate that they were able to provide that for us.
Do you capture that grant on the revenue side?
We do. We do. We also made an investment to the tune of about $110,000 into the diamond side of the facility in some landscape improvements, some long-standing, Blake can attest to this, some long-standing cleanup of a batting cage area. We replaced all of the shade structures on the campuses. Those were 9 years of a lot of sun damage done to those. And then some parking upgrades for some of our staff. And then we had, on the field sports side, we invested around $50,000 into our irrigation system to allow us to have more connectivity to our ancillary fields. So we've had a great system that has taken care of our primary fields, but our recreational fields have always been done with basically by hand, by turning those on and off by hand. And so we've gone in and added some wiring to be more efficient and have that run back to our main system so we could put those on schedule as much as we do our regular system. We also had about a $90,000 investment into various equipment for both our grounds team, operations team. So you see a lot of investment there into the upkeep of our facility. And then finally, probably the largest thing, and we'll see this here on the next page, there's a $710,000 financial exercise that took place late in 2022 where there was a payment that the city had to take $710,000, and then Grand Park was then reimbursed that $710,000. So it's a financial exercise. We're net zero, but unfortunately, because of the way that the dates fall, you see the $710,000 expended in 22. We see the revenues in 23. So I'll be sure to kind of remind everyone throughout the year that that is what happened. So it impacted us negatively in the expenses in 22, and then you see it put back in 23. So
Now, just for everybody's edification, what I've asked Matt to do, and with Jeremy's agreement, is this slide need to be redone or a second one added, because that transaction had nothing to do with Grand Park. It was for a medical payment. So there will be another slide added to this presentation, and that will show the actual operating. So it's really $1.4 million, as Matt indicates here, on profitability or positive cash flow for Grand Park. He should not get penalized in the numbers that was just strictly a financial transaction that Jeremy and his clerk treasurer had to perform at that time of year. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
yeah, it's a great point. I do want to note that exercise is fully shown here. So without that financial exercise, we did net $1.4 million, even with the investments that were made, as we just talked about. And then as it shows year end for the Grand Park budget, you'll see the $717,000 number. So just really wanted to be abundantly clear that that's where everything kind of came out. So without that financial exercise, you see that we did surpass our budgeted number of the $970,000 at that $1.4 million. So want to be mindful there as well. As we move into some of the department updates, I won't read all of these, but some of the ones that I'll kind of just hit one or two per section. But from an administration standpoint, I kind of spoke about it a little bit earlier, but we received the grant dollars from the Hamilton County to reinvest into the hard surface flooring to allow us to further entertain the opportunities there on the center field there. From the visitor experience, I always love hearing that we have a high satisfaction rate of both field care and our staff politeness. Two things we really strive for high marks on, and glad we hit that. From our grounds department, it's kind of staggering numbers if you look at it. Kind of small on the screen, but 1,100 different fields were painted in 22. So we're active out there, high utilization rate, really need to make sure that we're staying on top of that and have a high level of play there. We also invested not a ton of dollars, but effort in creating a nursery on site. So we have a sod farm that we are working on, and it's kind of in a parcel that was never really used. We just kind of kept mowing it year over year, and our grounds manager came up with the concept of creating an on-site sod farm so that when we have some of these more aggressive tournaments that start to rip into the grass, we can go in, rip sod from our sod farm, replace, so that we keep a high-level field. And then we did start in December. Grounds is getting a lot of love here, but in December we also started the turf replacement, but none of the expenses for that project took place until 23. But the project did start in December, and as of now we've played on 4 weekends of play on them. I'm really satisfied with that project. From a client services standpoint, really Q4 is a great time for our client services team to really dive into new policies or new procedures that we're going to take into 23. They did a really great job of fine-tuning our event guide that every single contract gets. It's kind of our A to Z of what to expect from Grand Park when they sign an agreement. Our facilities lines, you see a lot of facility improvements and reinvestment back into the facility. And then our operations team in Q4, really business as usual, maintaining the high level of events and making sure that all of our clients have a great experience from an operational standpoint. So with that said, I will pass it to William Knox, and I think what would be best is at the end, the three of us will be available for any questions that you guys may have. So I'll flip it to William with Legacy Sports Group.
While you're switching, can you tell us what did adding those storefront doors allow us to do?
Yeah, great question. So traditionally, just to keep everyone on the same level here, we had a conference room that faced the center hallway, and it was a roll-up door. You could hear and see everything. For lack of a better term, it soundproofed the room better. It's not completely soundproof, but it allowed us to have a nice front to that area. We've had multiple clients utilize that space in the past, and the complaint that we received is, it's great space, it's very functional. The problem is you hear everything from the hallway. So we have that storefront basically that allows us to kind of open and close and keep the sound in.
Matt, one more quick question. Obviously, the Indianapolis Colts have had a tremendous amount of personnel changes, including Jeff, who was our key guy for running the camp. Have they reached out to you at all and set up any schedule yet for all the preliminary work you folks do prior to camp?
Yeah, communication does not stop. So we're very sad to see Jeff Brown leave. He was instrumental in making camp happen in the past. And overall, just a great guy. But Joe Fonderoli, who was over the marketing and events team, has backfilled Jeff Brown's spot. So a familiar face in that role. Joe right now is wearing multiple hats as they try and backfill his spot. But we've had contiguous communications with him and his team. Met with them 2 Fridays ago, was on a call with them today. So that doesn't stop. So we're great. Full detail. We're getting closer to having Coach on site to do a full walk of the space and get him acclimated with what Grand Park looks like.
Great, thank you. William, you're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. William Knox, Legacy Sports Group. And I will say, as a segue, training camp would not be in Westfield if it weren't for Jeff Brown. Jeff was the first person that reached out to us about training camp and kind of very covertly came out and walked the space after the event center was open. So it's definitely sad to see him go. But I think they got a good group over there. So I'll be quick going through some of this. A lot of it is in the same format that you've seen it before, just going through some of our numbers. These are fairly small on the screen, so I'm sure you've had some time to look at it, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions. But this is the end of the year report, so this is more looking at the end of the year stats, but we wanted to share some of the fourth quarter data as well. The big numbers on our end is the business development side. And I believe from a field revenue standpoint, so Matt is currently working on the budget that he created. This year, in 2022, he was working on the last budget that I created. And as you guys remember, we had that stretch year where we were really going to try to see where we could go with some of the revenue side. And I believe our budget for field rental was about 3.5 for 2022, and we landed just under 3 million. So I think that was a really good year from a field revenue standpoint. You could see, fairly evenly distributed with the exception of Q3 throughout the year, but another really good year on the business development side.
Is there is there a key reason with the difference of 3.5 to 2.9?
3.5. So I think I personally wanted to give us a number to hit. And we were, given where we had come off of COVID and kind of how we were trajecting, I thought we could kind of get there. We knew that we were going to have to be very aggressive on the indoor space and selling that more. It's just a lot of the dates, and what you'll see, we're doing an exercise right now for the team showing the available rentable space, both in the event center and outside. There's not a whole lot out there. So there is some inventory we can sell, which we're going to talk to Matt a little bit about, but there's just not a ton there. It was one of those opportunities. If we had instituted some of our rate adjustments that we had contemplated, and then also we're just now getting to the point where we're implementing the additional fees for lining of the fields and other ancillary items that come along with it. So you'll definitely see in 2023 that number jump.
Thank you.
Yep. This is just some of the social media updates. I think this year we're a little more aggressive on the social media side. The team had really come together to showcase all of what we're doing. A lot of great content was put out. The field, redoing the fields was a big project that the staff undertook, which we kind of documented and went through and make sure we shared so that the potential visitors would know they'd be playing on new turf here soon. And this is just the year-to-date numbers. So a lot of robust content. We've added some individuals to our team that is working on more video content for 2023. So you'll start to see more of that pop up. And then just continuing to move forward with some of the social media updates for the campus as a whole. I think we talked about this a few times. We were very fortunate to receive a grant from the Indiana Destination Development Corporation to install 3 murals throughout the campus. We were one of many locations to be awarded this grant, but only the only location to be awarded 3 of the grants. So because of the size and scale of the park, they awarded us 3 grants, and we displaced those throughout the campus, 1 on the diamond side, 1 on the field sports side, and then 1 within the event center, all of them kind of unique. So those are pretty cool pieces of art on campus that now are used as a backdrop for photos and all that fun stuff. Mm-hmm. Sponsorship-wise, I think we had another good year. I've always thought that as a campus, we should be somewhere around $500,000 to $700,000 annually in sponsorship revenue. With the appropriate deals in place, I think we will get there. We are aggressively looking at really local and regional opportunities for sponsorship. We don't have the staff in place to do the national level reach that we probably need somewhere long-term, which we'll talk a little bit about at our next presentation. But I think we've done a tremendous job of maintaining the existing sponsors and then also working to secure new sponsors. So this is the list of sponsors that we have on site to date. The one big one we're working on, and actually we're talking with Matt about this, we had a meeting last week and I believe have another meeting tomorrow. As of July, the pouring rights deal for the campus is expiring. So we're looking at a renewal of that agreement potentially, and probably we'll take that to the market for multiple distributors to kind of evaluate. So that will be another big one that we'll work on this year, as well as a few others that we're trying to wrangle in here. This is just a listing of some of the major events for 2023 that are upcoming. Our team works very closely with Matt and his team to make sure all of these events are executed at a very high level. I think this year is going to be another banner year for the park as we continue to kind of flush out some of these opportunities. And then last but not least for me, I think I might have mentioned this during our last meeting. We are currently working on an economic impact analysis, a competitive set analysis, and then we're doing a sponsorship evaluation for the campus as well. We've partnered with 2 other organizations to help us facilitate this study because it was too much for us to tackle ourselves. And we wanted the economic data to be proven and submitted through an entity that could put a third-party stamp on it. Not that we couldn't, but we just wanted to kind of make sure we went through it the right way. So here very soon, we'll be sharing with you guys a report that showcases the economic activity dating back to 2019 through 2022. We've also gone in and worked to really identify the competitive set that Grand Park is within, to kind of showcase some of those other facilities that we compete against on a very regular basis and showcase some of the things that they do well versus kind of what we do well. And then we've worked with a group to really do an assessment of not the assets that we own at Grand Park around sponsorship, but more so other venues that kind of look like us or that are in this market and kind of what they're doing in the way of sponsorship, so that we can have some lessons learned there about further development opportunities in that space. Coupled with those 3 documents, we've been working with Matt for the last 1.5 years on the capital plan document. So we're going to incorporate all of that into our findings so we can kind of give you a really robust look at what's going on in the market, what's happening from an economic standpoint at the campus, and then also, opportunities for sponsorship. So I think that's it for me. I don't know if we'll wait until Blake is done and we can answer questions, or I'll be happy to answer them now.
I have an important legal question. Did that say Quidditch tournament?
Quidditch, yeah. Oh, yeah. It happens.
Okay.
It's real.
It's a little, I thought, I'm.
It's a real sport, Cam.
Okay. Making sure I read that properly.
Yeah.
Blake Hibbler, bullpen tournament's a little shorter than Williams, so hopefully I got that right. I'll be quick. You have a ton on your agenda, so I've given this presentation. A lot of you heard it at the hotel piece, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on what we have or haven't done. It's a lot of similar info as what they've provided. Our teams continue to grow. We're getting close to a flat line. We'll be, coming back with hopefully an update to improve the facility with grant monies of some kind at the end of the year. We were hoping to get it done prior to the start of this year, but we were unable to. So hopefully we'll be presenting back to this group with ways to help fund a major project to allow our team number count to go up. But as we sit today with Kokomo and Grand Park, we're fairly maxed out without adding high schools. So we're squeezing every last event out as we can, and we're trying to kind of build our shoulder events now. So you'll see that throughout our numbers, and I'm happy to provide more details if you need the numbers. Favorite places to stay, it's something we just track through Placer AI. Placer AI is one of the more recognized companies that tracks cell phone usage. This is just our baseball and softball team, so I'm sure the city can provide a much more detailed, look at where people go, but the big thing for me is just kind of maintaining that Hamilton County and our Westfield properties are first and foremost. A lot of the Indianapolis properties are usually just bigger and are able to give up more rooms. We have a lot of smaller hotels in our area, and that's just the nature of where we're at today. Looking ahead to 23, those are our numbers as far as teams, games, athletes, things of that sort. Pretty self-explanatory. Our 23 events, well, that's small. ABC Championships was built for Grand Park by us at Grand Park, so we have no intentions of moving that. That continues to be the largest series of baseball events in our area. By our accounts, it's 3rd in the country now. It trails, 2 events in Atlanta. So. The Alliance Softball is returning. We believe that's going to be a long stay event. We've actually moved it back a week, so it's in August. So that'll help our hoteliers and restaurants with another week. We've also added, that's one of the additional weekends, we also added a cricket event on August 20th. So while not Quidditch, we are moving into the cricket space. So Super Select's the best youth event in the Midwest. Youth ABC, we went from 1 weekend to 2 last year, hoping to continue to expand that to 3. That just makes the park more exclusive, as certain age groups can't play every single weekend here. 2023 will be sold out. We're at 92% right now. I do want to touch on, and this will lead into my next slide, out-of-state teams are down in 23. Hotel fees have gone up. So if you look at the percentage, while our teams have gone up, the hotel room nights will go up slightly, but you're not going to see the same, it's not going to be at the same pace as the teams. We're filling it with locals. So financially, you won't feel a miss, but you will feel a slight decline in number of out-of-state teams here. So last year we were at 67%. My prediction is 61% this year. It's fairly accurate based on where we're at. So average rates on the weekend, this slide, I don't know why this slide continues to show up this way, but we're at 240 or 250 in Westfield. Atlanta's around 230-ish. Everybody else is under 200 in the baseball market. And so this is a very unscientific way to look at it. My variables are simple. I use Expedia and looked at every single weekend. I took the top 20 hotels that were 3 stars or above, if there were 20 in the location based on a certain mileage. And I did that for every single city. So our customer is not paying this. I don't want to scare you away. I just want you to understand that, like, when you go on Expedia, this is where our rates are. Based on knowing the data in our areas, I think it is the most expensive place. So we will continue to kind of push back on that and let our hoteliers know, while we want them to make as much money as possible. You know, we are starting to hear or see a little bit of a decline. And it doesn't necessarily impact us. We're just filling it with more local teams. But it does impact the overall product, and it could potentially impact you on a hotel rebate standpoint. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for our sports experts
I have
here?
a couple.
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Going back to the hotel nights, I know a year or two ago, or so ago, when we went through that whole deal with Champion Park and Kokomo, is there a breakdown on what we're receiving from that end of the hotel rooms from the Kokomo extension?
I can only tell you the number of teams that increased.
I'm just talking about like the revenue that we were, the fees that we were supposed to receive. I've never seen that breakdown. Have you?
I don't track hotels.
Yeah,
The
right.
city does.
No, that's
so, yeah,
fine.
I'll let them.
It's just a general question.
So historically, we have broken that down. It's a little difficult. I think I mentioned this several meetings ago. Because they use Kokomo as an extension of the tournaments at Grand Park, it still falls under one umbrella of an event. So to go through and pull those, now what we can do with Blake's help is pull the additional number of teams that registered as a result of having Kokomo, extract those room nights that came along with those teams, and then we can give you a better count. It'll just take, if that is something that this group is looking to see in the future, we can try to get that program through site search, but it'll take a little bit of work.
Is it possible, William, to just see what the delta has been?
Yeah.
For?
Yeah, and I think we can go back
I
historically.
think that's where Bob's kind of
So
heading with that question.
why don't we look at 2022 as an example, and maybe we could pull some data that shows, as a result of champions in 2022, this is the net result, and we can work with Blake to figure that out.
Okay, very good.
Can you tell us, William, how does that work? Like, if the people who are going up to play on the Kokomo fields, yeah, Blake, you can probably answer. Are they playing both places?
Yeah, so
Kokomo?
the way we have typically done it, so everybody registers under the same system, which basically that starts all the communication. So they'll register on our bullpen tournament site. If you look at it, it's identical for Kokomo and Grand Park. Even if it's Kokomo specific, we have several events we've added that are only played in Kokomo. Those are still registered through bullpen. They're still registered. Site search immediately hits them with their hotel links and things of that sort. So when we schedule events, we either move an age group and advertise that the 9U, AA is just a level, but 9U AA is playing in Kokomo, 9U AAA is at Grand Park. So all the AA teams know, stay up in Kokomo or be up there. Or we'll say these age groups will play one game up in Kokomo. So once we get to our larger tournaments, we typically send them up for one game. So you'll see like our 15U ABC, every team will play 2 games here, 1 game there, 1 game offsite. And so then we just even it out. So they go up there for a day. 90% of them are still staying in here. So when you review, the traffic numbers and things like that, it's really hard for us to dial in on how we're impacting Championship Park just because we know everybody's coming down. So they may eat, you know, one meal on their way back or grab something at the gas station, but that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
I
guys.
got one more too.
Good. Oh, I'm sorry.
About sponsorships. Now, they're listed here as 2022. Are most of our sponsors paying for 1 year sponsorship? Because in the very beginning, didn't we get a big payment from, was it Pepsi that we got so much money at the very start?
Yes.
So was that for a period of time they were giving us that much money?
Yep. So on average, the agreements are 3 years. The Pepsi agreement was a 10-year agreement initially. So, but on average, we're 3-year for the most part, 3 years.
Okay.
So that just represents the revenue for that year. So some of those agreements are multi-year agreements, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I don't know if this would be for Matt or William, but since it's been recently decided that Grand Park is not gonna be for sale, any more discussion or further discussion on the tree park thing that got put on hold?
Yeah, we've put that discussion to rest until there's a decision of what's next with the RFP.
Okay. Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Let's move on to the
Thank you all for your
next-
support.
Thank you very much. Next item is a public hearing on the declaratory resolution amending the East Side Economic Development Area. We'll call that, well, first Cam, if you want to make any comments, and then we'll open up the public hearing.
Sure, I'm glad to preface both. We've got 2 confirmatory resolutions that each will be preceded by a public hearing. A little housekeeping, of course, you're all familiar with this. Crone proactively looks at parcel lists and tries to identify certain parcels within allocation areas that rezone to residential or more likely to be developed as residential so that we can do the proper amendment to remove those parcels from the allocation area. And that's the genesis of both of these amendments, which of course started with declaratory resolutions back in November, have since passed through the Planning Commission and the council and have been noticed for public hearing and are before you tonight to conduct those public hearings and consider confirmatory resolutions. The one, like I said, we know this process well. The one wrinkle that I want to point out is the East Side confirmatory resolution actually modifies the declaratory resolution by removing a parcel from the list of parcels to be excised. And that is based on the recommendation of the Planning Commission. They identified that parcel as more likely to develop as commercial and recommended that we leave that in. So that's not something I think we've done before, but it's the process working. I think that's why the statute says you have to go talk to the Planning Commission and the council, and we appreciate their input. I had a good conversation between planning staff and Crone and the city about what that parcel is and why it should stay. So that's the only variation on something that we've done several times before.
Okay, thank you for the
I'll
explanation.
let you take it from there.
Appreciate it. Okay, so we will open up at 6:48. I don't know if we have Kevin on the line. Do we have anything?
Kevin, do you have any emails?
I do not. I do not.
Okay, we'll wait here a few seconds and see if anybody zeroes in with any comments. Okay, hearing none, we'll close the hearing at 6:49. I think everyone's had copies of the resolution, RDC Resolution 01-2023. It's a confirmatory resolution amending the East Side Economic Development Area, and Cam's already explained that. So do we have any other questions on the resolution? Okay, hearing none, I'm open for a motion for approval of Resolution 01-2023.
I guess I'll make the motion.
Okay, Bob Beaudry, motion for approval. I'll second that motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John, take the roll, please.
Bob Beaudry,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Linda Noss.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Next item is a public hearing on the declaratory resolution for the Grand Junction. Cam, any comments you want to make on that one? That's
No-
pretty much
Nothing,
boilerplate.
nothing
you call
additional,
it.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll open up the public hearing at 6:50.
Kevin?
Kevin, we have anything?
No, nope, nothing on this one either.
Nothing on that one either? Okay. We'll wait a few minutes in case anybody wants to zoom in or team in. Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we'll have any questions as commission members on Resolution 02-2023? If not, I'm open for a motion for approval of Resolution 02-2023. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Bob Beaudry, second. John, please take the roll.
Doug Holtz?
Aye.
Jill Doyle?
Aye.
Joe Plankus?
Aye.
Linda Noss?
Aye.
Bob Beaudry?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
One
Next
item.
item on the agenda, I'm sorry.
Did you specifically close the public hearing? And if not, would you, just so we have that?
6:51.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Cam.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
no.
Thank you. Got to close the loop. Okay, next item does not require a public hearing. It's Resolution 03-2023, and that's regarding the determination of excess assessed value that we passed through. This is one that we've done in past years, and it deals with a couple parcels, which is really the old Dairy Queen and 21st Amendment, if I'm not mistaken, are what these two covered. So do we have any questions from commission members?
I think it's Taco Bell, not
Oh, Taco
21st
Bell.
Amendment, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good catch.
I have a question on page 5, near the bottom where it says, "Now therefore be it resolved." Am I reading this properly when in number 1 it says, 1, 2, 3, fourth line, budget year 2022? Then a couple lines later it says 23, then it says 23. Is the 2022 year correct there? Because I thought when I had gone back years before, we were always talking about the year we're in, which is now 23. Is that right, or is that a typo, or am I reading it wrong?
No, I think you're right, and that might be a typo. It should, I believe it should be budget year 2023.
Okay.
And if Jim Treat's on, he can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I think that should be changed to 2023.
Jim Treat, are you there, sir?
I do. I agree with that. I provided that change. It didn't get through, apparently. I made that comment. So,
Okay, so it should be 2023.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Were there any other changes, Jim, or that's it?
I think that was it, Linda. I think the letter that goes to the county had old years too, but I believe those are corrected now.
Okay, because that's where I was going next. So you think, yeah, those are correct,
Does
right?
it- See, yeah, yes.
Mhm. Well,
Those are correct.
except that in the second paragraph in the letter to Ms. Graham,
What does it say? Yeah.
it does
Oh,
say
it's supposed to be
2022.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we're in 23, 22's done, we're in 22 pay. Really, everything is set for 23. Yeah, we're talking about the 23 budget, but the only thing that Lee Graham can change is, at this point, it's for 23 pay 24. So that's why this approval needs to be done by mid-year of this year.
Exactly.
So that everything's in place before everybody's tax bases and neutralizations and all that's done for next year. So it really is the 24, but Lee knows that when she gets this, she'll go by, this is the only pass through these two areas that they've done before, and everything else for next year will stay the same. So I agree with moving it up to 23 and 24, but it's not going to cause a problem at the county. They know what this is about.
Well, yeah, I know.
Or
I know
certain-
Lee does that. I just hate to approve something with just a typo. Looks like we weren't paying attention.
Yeah, or you could move to approve it subject to those
I was
corrections.
gonna say.
And we
could-
can make the corrections.
Could I make a motion to approve it with those changes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
Linda.
I'm sorry. I think I had, that pay and arrear thing always messes with me. I think I had 22. Jim pointed it out. I thought I think there's an updated version floating, but sorry, as long as we have that in your motion, we'll make sure it's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay, we'll have that in the
Are you
motion.
ready
Linda.
for the
Good-
motion?
Good catch, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, if no further questions, then I'm open for a motion for approval of Resolution 03-2023.
Linda Nass, I am moved to approve Resolution 03-2023 with the amendments on page 5 that we insert the year 2023 in place of 2022 in that paragraph. And then on Exhibit A, the second paragraph should also be corrected to 2023 instead of 2022 in 2 locations there.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Bob Beaudry, got a second? Thank you, Bob. Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Please take the roll, John.
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
Aye.
Linda Nuss.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0, thank you. Next item on the agenda is goods and services contract for Grant Park. Jeremy, please.
Certainly, yeah. For you tonight for approval is a goods and service contract for a parking lot improvement project out at Grant Park. And this is the one you may recall I sent an email to you late last week to get this on the agenda. It's specifically improvements over in parking lot A. If you're familiar, this is parking lot A down here. This gravel area actually was a construction laydown area for pipe staging and things like that just naturally turned into a parking lot once the pipe was moved. So we would like to officially create a parking area in this location. The total cost of the project is $77,589. As you can see in the contract, and the urgency was, as you can see, they're eligible to start as of today, but with the caveat that they have to be done by May 19th. So pushing it a month to get approval would really hamstring their ability to do that, and honestly, it would probably result in a contract amendment. So,
Okay.
with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you
Okay,
have.
any questions for Jeremy? I know that's been a drainage issue and all kinds of things out there, so needs to be done.
They've worked for us before.
Yeah,
There's such a wide range here,
I was
but,
gonna pull that up too. I apologize.
right.
So the bid tabulations are on here. Just for the record, our Public Works Department did the design and bid on the project. Midwest Paving has done a ton of work for us over the years.
thought so.
Great
Always been
contractor.
good.
And they're very local. So we usually get a good price from them because they enjoy working for us. But yeah.
Thank
So
you.
the Howard Company. So some of these others are just larger companies that focus on road construction. Midwest, while they do that, they're more of a parking lot and resurfacing contractor.
Okay. If no further questions, open for a motion for approval of repaving parking lot A.
Linda Nass, I move to approve the contract.
Okay, Linda, motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jill Doyle, second. John, please take the roll.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Linda Nuss,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0, thank you. Next item is the Clerk Treasurer's Annual Report. This is really the first one I think we've gotten from the clerk, and I'd really like to kind of lump the two items together, I think. We've got the annual report right below that, Jim Treat does for us on an annual basis. And I think maybe what I'll ask him to do is, Jim, if you would you cover your report, and then we'll get into discussion on the entire subject?
Absolutely. Thank you. Jim Treat here with Cronin Associates. And as was referred to, we've been doing this report for quite a number of years. But we did coordinate. I do want to say, I mentioned that to Cindy, I would say, we've reviewed the numbers that her staff put together, went back and forth, making sure all the key things in terms of the actual revenues, expenditures, and balances in 22 were in agreement with what we have been what we're reporting. So I do want to make that mention. But this report is designed to satisfy all the commission's annual reporting requirements. It will be provided to the council next, which is a requirement. We don't have to present it, we just have to provide it to them. And then the final step, which needs to be done by the middle of April, is we will upload this report together with all the attachments and as well all the detailed parcel listings to Gateway. So then everything will be complete for you. So with that, if you could pull up our report, John or Chris, whoever's doing the screen, that would be helpful. I'll just go through a couple of things. Yeah, the next page briefly summarizes all these are the statutory requirements. In other words, who's on the commission? Does anybody get paid any salaries? No. And then we have a couple of attachments we'll go through. But the two key things that I cover here in very summarized format are what are the big project type activities that occurred during the reporting year of 22 and what TIF areas were created. So just touching on those because I think they are significant areas. There were two big areas of activity for economic development projects in 2022. And one was the continuing work in the Wheeler landing area. While the preliminary bonds or the major bonds for about $8 million were actually issued in 21, that's an ongoing project of all the infrastructure projects you see going on south of Grand Park. So that is a draw bond. So you'll see the balances change from year to year, and we report those, as does the clerk treasurer's office. What are all the draws on that bond? And what are they being spent on? And just to let everybody know, those infrastructure projects include construction on Grand Park Boulevard, the extension of Oak Ridge Road, construction of YMCA Road, extension of Tournament Trail, and then all the improvements at the intersection of 32 and Wheeler Road. So it's pretty extensive. It did start in spring of 21. It's scheduled to go through about the spring of 24. And everything is really running on schedule. At the end of the year, the net draws on that were $4.2 million. And I say net draws because one of the key attributes of this deal is that not only is the future TIF going to be used to repay these bonds in the Wheeler Landing area, but the road impact fees that are paid during the construction period of these projects by new businesses in the area, like the restaurants and banks, those kind of things, those road impact fees are direct reduction of the project costs of the outstanding bond amount. So that's a net amount so far, and that we'll continue to report that. The other thing that happened in Wheeler Landing was the issuance of a Series B bond for $2,750,000. That was purchased and it were related to the J.C. Hart multifamily project. And the important thing to note is for both of these deals, there's taxpayer agreements and also, which means a minimum generation of TIF supported by the developers. And if in the long term, the TIF generated by Wheeler Landing allocation area is not sufficient to repay those bonds, that's the extent of the RDC and the city's obligation. So those are the main things I wanted to say about Wheeler Landing. The other item was the issuance in September of the Building Corp lease rental bond to fund the parking garage in the Union Square project that's being built by Old Town developers. So that's ongoing, that just started. Those bonds were issued and the project just started late last year. The repayment of those bonds is planned to be from tax increment generated by the projects that Old Town's going to do in Union Square. To the extent there's any insufficiency, um, local income tax is pledged to back that up. So I think that there should be a pretty good match between those two. I don't think there'll be any significant shortfall, but there won't be a lot of excess TIF revenue either. There should be a pretty good match of those two pieces. So those are the major activities. In terms of the TIF areas created, in the prior year, meaning 2021, we dissolved the Lantern Commons area as it had been created because it was almost all residential and there was really no increment that was being created because of that. So you dissolved that one in 2021, and then in 2022, first quarter, once the new area, the new parcel was set up, the 158-acre commercial parcel that the developer now owns was set up, we established that as the new allocation area called the Front Street allocation area. So that's a new area, but it's really a carry forward of a project, and we are picking up with ongoing discussions with Front Street. That project will still be moving forward, but we're still in the process of discussions with them. The other area that was set up in 2022 was the Osborne Trails Economic Development Area. That area included two allocation areas, one with about 600 residential lots. And the reason we can TIF those in this case is because the lots are all age restricted. The buyers are age restricted. And so in that fashion, we can TIF those. And then there are three parcels on the south side, which we called South Allocation Area because those are commercial parcels, they're not residential, and we can't put them in the same TIF area. And that already includes the West Fork Distillery, so we'll be collecting increment from that, and then we'll see what else develops in those commercial areas. With that, I want to touch on a couple of the key numbers in this summary of the revenues, expenses, and fund balances. And the revenue side, the important thing is, of course, our tax increment collected. The grand total for this year was just about $8 million. I'm going to round numbers. That's not exactly 8, but it's almost right on there of this tax increment line. That's compared to about $7 million for the prior year. So that was the increase from 21 to 22, from about 7 to 8 million in TIF revenues. The other major revenues are from the projects that we just talked about, the bond proceeds coming in on Union Square of the 12,250, and then the two-wheeler bonds that were issued and the road impact fees that were collected and then applied to debt service down below in the last half. So then on the expenditure side, the biggest piece outside of the new bonds is payment on debt service. And these are all the same bonds with the exception of the Wheeler bonds that we paid debt service on in the prior year. The amount of debt service paid in total this year, if you take all those debt service lines, was about $5.3 million. And the amount in 2021, just to give you a comparison, was about 4.6. So pretty significant portion of the current TIF revenues be collected are already being paid for with the existing obligations. And we know we have some more things to add to this. So those are the things we're looking at in the look forward process. Those items would be the 2018 Grand Park note. You see the 2016 here, but the 18 is not on here yet. And that's the plan has always been to include that. And also the permanent financing of Grand Junction Park, which should be covered. The goal is to cover it with TIF. So those are the things we're trying to work in with whatever available revenues are. So I think the other thing to mention is that is looking at the balances, because there's a lot of attention, and as it should be, paid to cash balances. So the grand total from the beginning of the year or end of last year was about $14 million. If you just crossfoot all those numbers. The grand total, if you look at these numbers, it would appear that we're up to $28.8 million. However, that's not really comparable because the Union Square and the Wheeler numbers, which are $12.2 million there in the last two columns, are not available they're not unexpended available TIF revenues. Those are project funds for completion of the Wheeler projects and the Union Square parking garage. So those are already committed. They are not available to the RDC. The other funds that I mentioned are. And so the change is about from 14 million in these main funds up to about $16.5 million for this year at year end. And then the final schedule in this report, and I won't go through the whole thing because most of these items are the same bonds, TIF supported bonds. These are bonds that have a TIF pledge that we had on last year's list with updated balances. And the ones that were added were the second series of Wheeler, the down at the bottom, Wheeler Area 22 bonds. Those were the Hart bonds, as mentioned, for the Hart portion, multifamily development that's begun now in Wheeler Landing. And I think an important thing to note on the Hart bonds, guys, is that the amortization was set up for 25 years. The commitment is that J.C. Hart will redeem those bonds no later than 2/1/29. So it's really only a 7-year commitment by the RDC, and then he will come in and buy those bonds back, and that's the end of that Series B commitment. Then we'll only have just the net amount that's outstanding for the Series A. So, and then the other one, of course, that we added is the Union Square bond for the 12,250. Again, all the developer bonds on here for Spring Mill on down are through Wheeler. Your commitment is your TIF pledge, and that's it. Now, Union Square is a city bond, and I said as of earlier, if the TIF is not sufficient, you do have a lit backup, but we anticipate that to be a pretty good match between the two. So those are the items I wanted to cover this evening. I appreciate your patience, and I can try to answer questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any questions for Jim from the commission?
I think I have two questions, Jim. So going back up to your summary of revenues,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, in the column toward the right side, Union Square, the 230,000
Yeah.
plus, but then if we go down, doesn't that correspond to the 780,000?
It does.
Okay, and then did we report the 550,000 last year?
We did.
Okay, all right,
We
because
did.
I couldn't quick
I didn't
find
go
that
into that, Lynn,
to look
but
it up.
You asked, so I can, yes.
Okay,
The
good.
550 was received I don't know, was it a year or two earlier? It's
Yeah,
been a
it was
while.
earlier.
And the 250 was later. So yeah, we had already recorded that as a receipt into Union Square. When the second piece came in, then the whole amount was transferred at the request of the city in one deal. So yes, those are one-time transfers, Linda.
Thank you. My second question is, do we know yet on the Union Square what the interest and principal payments are going to be when we start paying on? Because I think in the document we
Yes,
approved,
that's
it
a
was
set
up to $1,040,000 a year. So do we know yet?
Yeah, 9-something, Linda. That's on
9-something?
Gateway. Yeah. The AM schedule's on Gateway.
Okay.
Can you get that? Or do you want us to? I mean,
No,
we can
I'll
send
go
to
look
you.
it up on
If you know where
Gateway. I just thought
with
maybe
all
you
the
had that
Gateway
number
portions.
in your head.
Yeah, it's 9. It's not over $1 million.
Right,
I want to say
okay.
975, 950 to 975.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure what the interest on that was. You know, everybody's talking now about interest, but,
I know.
okay.
Okay, good. Thank you, Linda. Okay, with that being said, if there's no further questions, I think, Jeremy, you can just work with Jim Treat, and have that report filed as required by the 15th. John, next item is project projections.
Good evening, John Rogers, City of Westfield. I've put together a list. It's a growing list, as you can see. We've been working on this list. I think I first introduced this maybe last October or September. The purpose is really just to raise your awareness of what we have on our list of possible projects that the RDC could be asked to participate in, right? The decisions to move forward with these projects in most cases are going to be the decisions of the city council, right? And so in some cases, they might reach out to us and say, could you help us out with one of these projects? I wanted to at least get the list in front of you. You could familiarize yourself with the sites throughout the city. If you have any questions, if you want to email those questions to me, I can get you some answers from the engineering department about these projects. So again, so just to raise your awareness.
Yeah, I think, I've been working with John and Jeremy on this because I think it's important. There seemed to be a sense that we're just sitting on a pile of money doing nothing, whereas there is a ton of stuff here, and obviously we don't have anything close to $239 million in our pocket. So, as we work with the council and work with the administration to, have the projects prioritized, there may be some that we can do on our own or fund on our own, or maybe a partial payment kind of thing that, we could help the city with. So again, as John's pointed out, this is really for our understanding of what's out there, and there's a lot of stuff, and I'm sure this will be a list that will be in motion at times with additions or deletions or modifications to it. And I think as you get those, John, if there's a quarterly change, I don't think we need anything more often than that. Just submit that to the commission on a quarterly basis via email. That would be fine, because it's certainly nothing we have to act on, but it sure is nice to have the most up-to-date information that we can understand what the options are.
Is that a different, the downtown garage, is that a additional garage, or?
That is correct.
That would be a garage over on the east side of Union, Bob, that would be just north of the cemetery. But that's like in phase 2 with Old Town, so that's years down the road, I'm sure.
It's just on the list right now.
Yeah,
There's a potential.
That's a good question.
It's not the garage.
It's not, this is a different garage. It's
For
a
the future.
potential that it makes the list because it is a potential. It's on the horizon.
Yeah.
So basically, the numbers next to those projects are just guesstimates, because it just depends on when it happens and what the cost is at the time.
I really can't say, I believe the engineering department, it's more than a guesstimate, Bob. I mean, I do believe a lot of these, they've put a lot of time into, and we've got a really good number. You look at a lot of rounding and it makes it look that way, but that's me. I just rounded it
Well, I'm just
for
saying,
our
like,
purposes.
if they don't do the garage for 3 years from now, it could cost a lot more by then. Right?
I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah, that's all.
Jeremy?
Yeah, and to that point, Bob, you're correct. These are our best numbers today on known construction factors. It's very volatile. We are seeing, fortunately, with some recent lettings that.
Oh, yeah. Cost of concrete's gone ridiculous.
Yeah, but we're actually seeing things level out and start to come down. So, not that it's ever going to be where it was 2 years ago, but hopefully there's some reasonability that starts to, pump into the construction world. But these are all really good numbers. They are subject to change. We will continue what we have always done as a city, which is pursue grant opportunities to fund some of these projects. The list will grow, priorities will change, all those other things, but this is where we're at today. And I'm sure by the time we get back to the office tomorrow, there'll probably be another project or two that we could add to it, so.
Can I ask a couple questions on some things that did change? Because we don't have these designed per se.
No.
Okay.
Some of them may have, like 161st and Spring Mill has a design. 161st Street Tunnel, Monon Tunnel has mostly designed. So all of them.
How about the Spring Mill Road? Because I noticed that these numbers are considerably up from what we had in August. So is that because we're getting closer to knowing what that's going to cost?
The widening.
It was 29 and 12 million. Now it's 35 and 15 millions. Just estimate on cost increases, or?
I'm sure that's the case, yes. Those two pieces are not designed.
Okay, and then the Tomlinson Road widening, I thought I had heard something about $710,000 for this, where we're listing as 400. Do you relate to that number? I thought at council, somebody was saying 710 to widen Tomlinson, and I'm like, this is
I
400.
can't speak to that specific
Okay.
number, other than that is a project that'll likely get constructed this year. So it
Okay,
would
and then
come
on the
off the list.
191st, I know we had talked about that when we did the Osborne Trails, EDA, and what have you. So it looks like now, it's maybe a lot lower than it was last August. Last August, we had like over $40 million for that.
Last August, it included both sides of 31.
Yeah, but even here, if you add 8,
You got 3 sections there, 18,
the
26,
26 is
and
the
8.
same number as was in August, but this 8 million and 10 million, that would be 18.3.
That
Back in August, we had
excludes,
40, so is it not 40? Because that number, remember, we had talked about it, how are we gonna cover that?
but again, we don't have it designed, and we don't know the cost until it's bid and have engineered drawings, is really where we get to it. But I believe the difference there is
believe-
that the crossing of the Monon Bridge is not in those numbers.
Is not in here, okay, all right, I just wondered why it was so, okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Joe.
And I would
Appreciate
just,
it.
I would just clarify that before any of these were to be moving forward as expenditures, that would, you all would
Oh, yeah, there's a
hear
whole
that and
process.
approve. This-
Yeah, it's
this
just looking at.
Informational, anything that would
Yep.
be contributed from any allocation area would be something you would need to approve.
Yep, that's good.
Couple more
Thank you.
quick items. One, if you haven't seen the progress that they're doing on the library, you ought to take a drive over, walk over there after you get your Chiba food or whatever. But it's really coming along nicely. The 28th, there will be a groundbreaking by Millennium on the new medical facility. They should be closing here very shortly, and then they will break ground on the 28th. Don't have a time yet, but that will be coming up, and there should be probably a notice on the city website or maybe on the chamber. So that's coming up. So that's pretty exciting. That moves another large parcel into an item that will now give us some generation of TIF funds down the road. So that's exciting stuff. Okay, anything else for the good of the order, John or Cam?
Hey, Joe, it's Jim Treat.
Yes.
I looked up that payment schedule for Linda while you guys were talking about the project list. Linda, I was really close. I just eyeballed it. The average debt service pay or lease payment on that's about $980,000, $980, starting in
980.
2027 when we're at full debt service. And
Okay,
the interest rate was not the greatest, but it is what it was. It was 5.4%. So I felt really lucky to get that locked in when you did and be able
Yeah.
to still be under that maximum payment. So
right, still within what we were
Right.
allowing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
just got it in there. So, yep, that's what it was. Just, I'll let you guys go, but I
Good,
thought, oh, I
good
found
job,
it.
Jim. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you,
Appreciate that.
thank you, Jim, I appreciate that.
Okay, if there's nothing more for the good of the order here, do I have a motion for adjournment? So moved. Do I second?
Second.
Second, Bob Beaudry. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Voice vote. Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Go to dinner, Doug.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Where is he, in Florida?